Çok kıymetli misafirler, değerli katılımcılar, değerli milletvekilimiz, Sayın Büyükelçim, kıymetli Silahlı Kuvvetler Ateşem, gerek Türkiye'den gerekse Amerika Birleşik Devletleri'nden aramızda bulunan ve bilgilerini bizlerle paylaşan çok değerli akademisyen dostlarımız, yine Amerika Birleşik Devletleri ordusundan bizlerle birlikte olan çok değerli meslektaşlarım ve bizleri bugün burada güzel bir ev sahipliğiyle ağırlayan, şahsıma sizlere hitap etme fırsatını sunan SETA Vakfı'nın çok kıymetli temsilcileri ve yöneticileri, değerli panelistler ve dinleyiciler. Teşrifleriniz için çok teşekkür ediyor. Öncelikle hepinizi sevgi ve saygılarımla selamlıyorum. Tabii biraz önce CV'mi anlatırken aslında kısa olanı tercih ediyorum ama uzun CV anlatınca da aynı zamanda yaşımız da ortaya çıkıyor. Değerli dostlar, 15 Temmuz 2016 akşamı Türkiye'de meydana gelen darbe girişimiyle alakalı olarak yaşananları ve bu hadise bağlamında küresel bir tehdit haline gelen radikalizmde yeni bir yapılanma türü hakkında sizlerle deneyimlerimi paylaşmak üzere huzurlarınızda bulunuyorum. Öncelikle bizlere bu fırsatı verdiğiniz için hepinize ayrı ayrı teşekkür ederim. Değerli dostlar, Türkiye tarihinin her döneminde yaşadığı coğrafyanın bir getirisi olarak sosyal ve siyasal yükü ağır bir ülke olmuştur. Birçok ticaret yolunun kilidi durumundaki Anadolu topraklar üzerinde yaşadığımız için gerek Anadolu topraklarında gerekse Orta Doğu topraklarında mücadele olgusu hemen hemen hiç bitmemiş, deyim yerindeyse bir gün bile mola vermemiştir. 15 Temmuz öncesinde Türkiye yine ciddi bir mücadele ve arınma sürecinin içerisinde bulunuyordu. Bir yandan 7 Haziran seçimleri sonrasında daha önce görülmemiş şekilde tırmandırılan PKK ve DH kaynaklı terör hadiseleriyle mücadele ediyorduk. Öte yandan da öncesi olmakla beraber somut olarak 17-25 Aralık'ta başlattığımız devlet içinde yuvalanmış radikal bir örgüt olan FETÖ terör örgütünün illegal yapılanmasından arınma sürecini yürütüyorduk. Ekonomide herhangi bir kriz yok. 1 Kasım seçimleriyle yeniden istikrara kavuşan siyasal sistemde günlük rutin tartışmalar dışında herhangi bir kriz yok. Parlamento çalışıyor. Kamu düzeninde devlet bütünlüğünü tehlikeye atacak herhangi bir sorun yok. İşte böyle bir ortam içinde 15 Temmuz 2016 günü Türk Silahlı Kuvvetleri'nin Genelkurmay 2. Başkanı olarak makam odamda çalışırken tahminen saat 21:25 civarında odamın kapısı çalındı. Ben de gel dedim. Ve o andan sonra yaşananların hiçbiri nefes alıp vermek dahil yaşanan hiçbir şey bu kadar normal olmadı. Birden bire içeriye büyük bir bağırış ve çağrışla yüzleri maskeli, asker kıyafetli 10 kadar darbeci girdi. Onların yat emrine uymayıp bir tanesini yere fırlatınca takdir edersiniz ki işin rengi biraz değişti. Bir karışıklık ve itiş kakış yaşadık. Ve bir Türk askerinin düşman askerine yapmayacağı bir muameleyle karşılaştık. Tabii etrafımı sardılar, beni tuttular ve bir şekilde ortamdaki hareketlilik duruldu. Bu insanlar özel kuvvetler personeli, eğitimli insanlardı. Sıradan düz asker değildi. Ve biraz sonra kapı açıldı. İçeriye aslında o anda İstanbul'da kursta olması gereken emir subayım sivil kıyafetle içeri girdi. Alaycı bir şekilde meraklanmayın komutanım, bu bir tatbikat dedi. O andan itibaren olayın resmi zihnimde belirginleşmeye başladı. Ve bir darbeyle karşı karşıyaydık. Ama bu eski zamanlarda yaşanan ve aslında hiç olmaması gereken darbe girişimlerinden çok farklıydı. 17-25 Aralık'tan beri resmi olarak devletimizin mücadele halinde olduğu radikal bir örgüt olan FETÖ iltisaklı subay ve astsubaylar tarafından gerçekleştiriliyordu. Müsaade ederseniz bu noktada size Türkiye'nin FETÖ tecrübesinden ve bu yapıdan biraz bahsetmek istiyorum. Bilindiği gibi aşırılık ve radikalizm veya küresel terör, Suriye ve Irak'taki yoğun gündem nedeniyle DAEŞ üzerinden tartışılmakta ve takip edilmektedir. Oysa bu görüntü genel olarak kendini şiddetle tanımlamayan veya sınırlı şiddet eğitimi olan, belki de bu eğilimini profesyonelce gizleyen örgütler ve oluşumlarla mücadele etmemize engel olmamalıdır. Şunu unutmamalıyız ki, terör örgütleri de tıpkı modern yaşamın kurumları gibidir. Eski tecrübelerden ders alır ve kendilerini yapısal olarak yenilerler. Yeni taktikler, yeni yaklaşımlar geliştirirler. DAEŞ, PKK, DAEŞ-KPC, Hizbullah, El-Kaide, Avrupa'da ETA ve diğerleri. Klasik yapılanmaları ve kuralları olan, eylem biçimleri olan terör örgütleridirler. Ama Türkiye 1980'den itibaren belki de terör yapılanmalarının
maybe has been witnessing the better version of terror restructuring. In Turkey, if you look at Presidency of Religious Affairs, and there was we talk about a regular imam. He has talks, has speeches with people around them, and starts to be influential on people around them. Following that, the crowd around them gets more organized, get in touch with each other, they support each other, and they organize meetings and talks amongst themselves. And with the discriminatory behavioral patterns that they're developing, for example, if you look at radical organizations, they develop a tendency for secrecy, and just like any other radical organization, they try to distance themselves from their own families, from their own social life. If you look at the children that join this organization, they have dorms and different services for people, and these are dorms, these are the unity of, if you look at what they call themselves is the service movement. When we look at people who join the organization for college students, they create houses for them. In these houses, there are brothers and sisters, as they call them, and all their actions are under control. And the youngsters that they recruit, they never leave alone. And for the same purpose, these people get code names, and so they can develop a feeling of identity. When we look at the radicalized persons, what they share in common is that they have no chance to make preferences, or they are convinced not to have them. If you look at the leadership of Fethullah Gülen in this organization, these students in these dormitories and houses made no choices of their own. They took direction. Whatever profession they will choose, what institution they will work at, even what self-service they're going to get, and hold on, who they would marry is taught to them. So look at this organization or this institution could not marry people they loved. The brothers and the sisters They provide the catalog for them, and the person in that catalog could choose a spouse. And if the brothers and sisters don't find that appropriate, even the date of the marriage could be delayed, because the organization gave them a role. For example, right now, the sleeper cell, the marriage rates in the sleeper cells have gone up. To save the rest of the organization, they're trying to camouflage their actions in daily life, and they are marrying. They're being directed to marry people within the organization. Let me give you an example of what reveals this dimension of living in this, according to instructions. On the night of July 15, the pilots who bombed the Grand National Assembly, what they told at the court was that they were innocent and that they were only following orders. Just imagine this. A fighter pilot in the middle of the city ends up bombing the parliament building of his own country and gets a direction. And without questioning that, and claims his innocence. We're not talking about someone uneducated. It's a fighter pilot. This is a highly trained, seriously trained person. And when we look at the SETA terror organization and our government's struggle with that, raises the consciousness, raises awareness about this. And this is unlike the perception of this in many other countries. This hasn't started on that night. If we look at this awareness, it goes to a period that preceded the December 1725 incident. If we look at just institutions, just like human beings, benefit from experiences and introduce new steps. Therefore, certain countries and certain allies, we see some of our allies are confused about defining SETA as a terror organization, and they seem to be confused. Because this is an unprecedented type of organizational behavior that we're facing. Overall, this is a very long period of organization that we see, and during that period they have hidden their radical identities within relief agency organizations or religious communities in a successful manner. They have approached power step by step, and that was their strategy. For instance, somebody would start as a cleaning worker in an institution, then they would send in a security officer, then a regular white-collar worker, and then higher-level officers, experts, and so on. The people who left provided intelligence, references, and guidance for the new ones coming in. And in each institution, there were people responsible for the organization. Thus, if we have to look at it in a perspective of 30, 40 years, and think about the power of the institutions and the power of law, and that they had the right and the opportunity to reach arms, legal force, and everything. But they have kept this under control until they were ready to push that button. That is to say, they had to stock the weapons, they had to train militants, and they didn't have to put them on the field right away. They already had the weapons, but they belonged to the government, the planes, the tanks, and the soldiers. They had members in the army to use them, and they had commanders to give the command to shoot, so they could use this force. They had the opportunity to use this force at any time they wanted. If you look at SETA in the last 40 years, the way it infiltrated all institutions from the lowest and to the highest has been successful in putting in its members in all of these. However, what's more important is that these people, if we look at the years and the training they received, but despite all that, they have managed to keep their loyalty to the organization alive. Leave aside the fighter pilots. on the 15th of July, the push, we look at, there were generals who joined in this move. Many of these people are colleagues. We worked together for years, and they are acquaintances. A generals, think about his or her career. These people, for such a long time, at the end of this process, they still, at the direction that came in one night, could turn into a robot. And that night, and when I saw the treachery of my aide de camp, shows you the example from my perspective. This is the best example. Within the Turkish armed forces, when we look at people who promoted in succession, and these people who finish some of the best military schools in the world, not only in Turkey. Yes, when you enter this organization as a child at a young age, and you are trained with certain techniques, with the secrecy and following an order that we mentioned, you can turn into a robot easily. After what happened in my office, they wanted to take me out of the building. Closed my eyes, they tied my hands, and they put me in a vehicle. While I got out of the building, I recognized my aide-de-camp from his voice. He opened the barriers, and when they tried to take me away, the security, someone has reached the friends at the security, so they didn't open the gates. My aide-de-camp got out of the car. He said, "Open the door or I'll shoot." They didn't open the door, and conflict ensued, shooting, and and my aide-de-camp got killed in that fight. The person next to me, when I understood they opened the gates, I put my shoulder to him and made him fall over. After the push attempt, next day, there was no spot on the car that wasn't hit by a bullet. And I realized we survived by miracle. The colleague who didn't open the gate and fired back had to be in a coma due to all the wounds he suffered, and he opened his eyes recently, and that gave you a clue about the structure of the coup attempt. The July 15 coup attempt was organized by a group that infiltrated the military and made it look like a fait accompli. This was an action of a group and an organization. If you look at the number of people who joined this move, if we look at the ratio of these people to the general structure of the military, this is a very small group. The strategy that they adopted was having key traitors in critical spots, and they used guns. They were instructed to do the coup. They followed the media communications, and they wanted to convince our population that this was a military coup. But at this point, when we look at our president and our government and our mighty nation, responded in a critical way and thwarted the scenario. The democratic reflexes of our mighty nation is indeed a reflex to ensure the continuity of the state. Our nation understood that this was a coup attempt by an organization and that it had to be put down, and they understood this in a rapid manner and went to the streets. If we look at the coup attempt, this was a small minority within the army, and they wanted to make this attempt look bigger and use a limited number of aircraft and tanks. It should be noted, the Turkish military forces did not advance towards the nation. It was a group within the army, and they wanted to activate the military forces and push through the coup. Perhaps this is the most critical point of July 15th analysis. If one fails to interpret this correctly, We cannot understand that FETA is a radical terrorist organization, and we can't understand that July 15 was a terrorist act. After what happened at the gate, they understood they couldn't take me out of the building by car. They dragged me into another car and transferred me to another building. After we waited for a while, a helicopter arrived, and the coup plotters' headquarters, I was taken to the Akıncı base, air base, that was their headquarters. There I was locked up, and afterwards I saw the F-16s take off from the ground. Later on, I was told that taking me to that airbase was pre-planned. They started the armed phase of the coup. They wanted for me to be taken there to start it. I learned afterwards that our commander of the Turkish Armed Forces was also taken to Akıncı Air Base, to the next room. But eventually, being a man of honor in Turkish military forces, he did not give any credit to these pack of bandits and resisted. And there's, of course, a hierarchical order. We look at the coup attempt that was planned by this organization and its leader, Fethullah Gülen. There are these ranking colleagues outside that are, for example, like the martyr Ömer Halis. Their strength and courage is what hampered the bridge between the Turkish armed forces and this radical terrorist organization. From my point of view, if you look at one of the critical issues of the failed coup attempt, is that failed connection between the military forces and the terrorist organization. When we look at July 16 around noon, they opened the door of the room I was locked up in, and I heard a familiar voice. Said, "Hey, Yaşar, what are you doing here?" This was someone I worked with for a long time, for years. Our families had met, and it was Akın Öztürk, the Air Chief Marshal. He was wandering freely while I was in handcuffs. His aide-de-camp was accompanying him and giving orders, and he told me that he was surprised at my presence. I'm telling this for my American friends. We have an idiom in Turkish. It's about faking a friend. He was showing a fake friendship towards me, but at the same time, it was interesting that he was free in that situation. If he had been on our side, he should have been treated like I was, but that wasn't the case. They opened my handcuffs, they removed my eye patches, and they offered me that I could speak to my family. No doubt, being a soldier, we are always on full alert as members of military, and we're always careful about struggle, and this is our way of life. Within a few minutes, despite these changing circumstances, I was not relieved or relaxed. I tried to focus on figuring out what was going on and the network of the relations. For example, despite the offer that they provided for me to call my family, I didn't move. I understood that every action I took would be an excuse for their crimes and murders. They dialed my home with a fixed line, and I shouted out from where I was, and I said I was okay. I did not approach the phone. They probably didn't detect any change in my attitude, so they left me in the room, and Air Chief Marshal Akın Öztürk reminded me as he was leaving that there were guards waiting in front of the door. At this point, I felt bewildered and sad, and I realized that the structure of the organization facing us was a lot different than what we knew so far. The man in front of me was a chief marshal of the Air Force. As I said, we had a personal relationship that went on for years. He was a colleague for a long time. And despite these high degrees and a long career, he was using this good cop, bad cop role as he approached me. If we consider these all together, we understand all elements of this radical organization, and that's how they were within our daily lives. Radicalism isn't a brand new problem. Everybody can see this, nobody can ignore it, and it is influencing all the 7.5 billion people that live on this earth. And worst of all, it is expanding using the power of communication and technology. If we look at this concept, this is just like combined vessels. This is distributed evenly throughout the globe. The bombs are in Baghdad, Şanlıurfa, in Berlin, and in London. And more importantly, radicalism can distribute itself both to the results and the consequences. These actions can be carried out by a single organization or different organization with different purposes. If we look at the motivating factor of radicalization, it might be different religions or different ethnic origins. These people with above average education or above average intelligence can carry out some of the most bloodiest terror actions in the world. People who spend a significant period of their lives in important duties in an army of a country may join radical organizations in retirement and turn all their experience into a problem. We today observe radicalism in Daesh or Boko Haram. However, if we look at Finland with a per capita income of $42,000, their soldiers of Odin can come around and carry out anti-immigrant actions. What I'm trying to explain is this. Our problem doesn't have a Daesh problem, it doesn't have a Boko Haram problem, it doesn't have a ETA, neo-Nazi, or other organizations problems that we haven't heard of. The world has a radicalism problem. The names that I mention are the consequence of that problem and actors within it. If we do not identify the problem correctly, we won't be able to identify the consequences accurately, and we cannot find correct solutions. First of all, we have to identify this. Radicalization is a process. It is a process where the idea turns into a violence. It is the name of this process. Radicalization, first of all, starts with an idea, is followed by a religious or ideological indoctrination process, and this process ends up in radicalization. That is to say, the minds get radicalized first, then the hands, and then the fingers that pull a trigger or a fuse. Of course, to prevent radicalization, you cannot prevent ideas. However, if you look at track the traces and the common features of process, then these structures and persons can be seen to have a hate and intolerance about people who do not share the same idea. They accept their view as the only truth, and they ignore different opinions, and they identify everyone else as a single group or a single structure. Furthermore, contrary to popular belief, people do not adopt radicalization. They don't get radicalized depending on their previous beliefs and ideas. First of all, they get radicalized mentally, they get isolated from society, then they find most organized or radical structure they can reach and become part of it. Then the process that I just mentioned, the idea, from idea to violence, takes place. Today, the Daesh terror organization, if we look at them finding militants in the center of Europe, it's the biggest example of this. As a result, what defines a radical action from a democratic action is the use of violence as a method. And this sort of violence is what defines terrorism around the world. Radicalization is the most definite characteristics of terrorism. If you look at this theoretical framework that I provided for you, you can see this in all articles and books and analyses written on terror around the world. However, as a citizen, this ethnical, marginal radicalism and false messianic-based radicalism as a country as someone who comes from this country, and so these terrorist representatives. This is a country that lives through all these, and as a citizen who joined this fight against these sort of terrorists, and as someone who experienced what he experienced on July 15, I wanted to present you the practical results of this theoretical framework that I provided you. In that room, I'm not sure how long I stayed there. In the morning, I started hearing the F-4 fighter planes, and then the F-4s bombed the Akıncı compound. Then I understood that the Turkish armed forces intervened into the actions of this terrorist group and take care of them. And you might have followed it in the media. The coup attempt was actually done faster, they done at an earlier time than previously planned. I want to actually respectfully disagree. They say that if it had taken place at the correct hour, it could have succeeded. Then everybody would be sleeping and the coup plotters would take precautions, etc. I want to ask you this. Would this nation not wake up on July 16? Would people not give the same reaction they gave at night in the following morning? If they were scared of weapons, they would have been scared of it at night. I don't think the reaction would be different. I think it would be incorrect to say that. If we look at the character of the coup attempt, we can see this as a terrorist group, action of a terrorist group, and the people saw this clearly. And the events followed accordingly. Thus, I don't think there would be a change in the reaction, and the fact that the action was realized earlier would change the course. I don't believe this. What we see, when they took care of the official channel TRT of the government, they thought that people would give up, just like the old coups that happened, and that people would not show a reaction, and the rest of the army would just agree to this de facto situation that was created. However, at the call of our esteemed president, they understood that they needed to take a more treacherous way of using the armed version of their plan. And there was a lot of pain in the following hours, but at the same time there were a lot of heroic situations. There were 249 people who were martyred. They were all sons of our people, our sons, and our children. I cannot describe the agony in my heart. May Allah rest their soul. We have 2,193 veterans in this event. May Allah bless them all and help them all. And the positions that were lost in the coup in the first few hours were taken back one by one. The TRT was taken back from the plotters, and that was a signal that the coup attempt had failed. The bombs kept falling, but the people did not take a step back. After that, our army and our security units, the coup attempt, they suppressed the coup attempt before morning. Distinguished guests, What I want to draw your attention to here is this. We are talking about a 40-year-old organization, and in the last 3-4 years they have been in a conflict with the political power. And thousands and tens of thousands who infiltrated in the state organization and different parts of the government and state tried to attempt a coup, and they get thwarted by civilians who went to the street with bare hands, and the security forces who devoted themselves to the state, and their attempt fails. Next morning at sunrise, people kept on with their lives. There was no interruption, no disruption to daily life. And on Monday, when the markets reopened, there was no liquidity problems, there was no crisis in the stock market. People were going to the banks, but not to pull their money out. They just wanted to convert their savings into Turkish lira to just support their government in case of a crisis in the market. I want to say that this is real power. I didn't want to start my speech, this has happened to us. Rather, I want to say that Turkey witnessed an unprecedented act of radical terrorist organization, and Turkey overcame this with its own internal dynamics. But there's a dangerous organizational structure here, and the world should be on alert against this kind of organization and this sort of radicalization. And Turkey is not the richest country when it comes to oil reserves. In economic size, it's not the most powerful country in the world. But if we look at the comparative advantage that Ricardo talked about, Turkey's comparative advantage is a struggle against crisis, its struggle of counterterrorism, and its struggle against migration. Turkey, for a long time, lived with 70% inflation for long years. Thus, our nation is very sensitive towards economic operations towards it. Our country was one of the countries that got the least influenced by the 2008-2009 economic crisis, and has been fighting PKK for 40 years. And when we look at Daesh and KCK, that's the extension of PKK, and YPG and PYD, it has also been fighting these. And about migration that came in from Syria, it has a policy of open doors and has hosted more than 3 million Syrians and spent $25 billion on these people. On top of all this, we witnessed what I just described above on July 15, but in the morning, the country woke up whistling. This is real power. This is not just economic power, but this is a power that was given to it in thousands of years to Anatolian territories, to civilization that existed there, and the political wisdom that these lands developed. Therefore, if we look at counterterrorism as a problem on a global scale, the world could benefit from Turkey's experience and the power that it has, and it could pay attention to its warnings and follow its guidance. Turkey has warnings about PKK, PYD, YPG, as well as FETA and Daesh. It has warnings towards the global world. Certainly each country will consider all these within its own internal structures and make decisions. However, it should be pointed out that this is not just Turkey's matter. When we look at the fact that the leader of FETA speaks Turkish and that the city that got bombed on July 15 was in Turkey, doesn't mean that this problem just belongs to Turkey. This is a problem of radicalization. Even if it doesn't have actions about other countries, this organization can be an example for other terror organizations. This is like a sector, and these organizations are related to each other. We should not forget this. We will look at the period before July 15. The fact that PKK was instructed to pursue a state of inaction, and that just shortly before that FETA members were exchanging intelligence with PKK's actions was revealed in our investigations and recorded in the report. Therefore, the world public opinion should come up with policies to counter the terrorist organizations and radicalization over principles, not over persons and countries. In conclusion, terror organizations are becoming institutionalized and globalized, and they are trying new strategies and methods. FETA amongst these is the most intricate and most strategically organized structure, but it is the newest for the world. It would be a mistake to see this organization as a relief agency and to describe July 15 as a political action and not interpret it as a terror action, and to interpret it as a struggle for power within the country would be a mistake. It should be noted that this sort of mistake shall cost our next generations to the extent of living in the grip of radicalization and reading democracy only in history books. Let me greet you with these thoughts and remarks, and thank you on behalf of my country, and listen to me patiently and sincerely.